Hello again, everyone. Welcome to the Moodle Academy webinar on how to co-create courses with ABC Learning Design. I'm Jessica Gramp, Moodle Community Manager, and I had the privilege of working alongside Clive Young and Natasha Perovich, who co-created the ABC Learning Design method. I've run ABC workshops in a number of countries and was involved in an ABC to VLE Erasmus Plus project before joining Moodle HQ. I'm really happy to be able to share with you today how we've adapted the ABC Learning Design method to co-create our Moodle Academy courses. One of the reasons we created this course was that many of our learners asked for a more hands-on training after we co-created the Introduction to ABC Learning Design course with Clive and Natasha. So the purpose of today's webinar and the associated course is to show people the steps we take and give you a chance to have a try yourself. So today we'll be covering how Moodle Academy uses ABC Learning Design method, and we'll start with some background about the method itself. Then we'll break into breakout rooms, and as a smaller group, we'll step through the Moodle Academy course design process. And when we return to the main room, you'll be able to ask questions. Keep in mind that our facilitators today aren't necessarily really familiar with the ABC process. So if there's any questions that come up during our breakout rooms, you can always bring those back to the main session and I'll do my best to answer. And I'll finish the presentation with some other information about how we co-create our Moodle Academy courses. The ABC Learning Design, or ABC LD for short, is a high energy, hands-on curriculum development workshop developed at UCL. Moodle Academy have adopted and customized this process to co-design courses online with Moodle community members in just 60 minutes, whereas the original workshop was 90 minutes long. Obviously, we've had to move online, not just because of the pandemic, but because our team is situated all over the world and we're not co-located with the people who are co-designing our courses with us. The benefits of the ABC Learning Design method are that it's fast, it works online, it focuses on the student learner journey, and it simplifies learning so anyone can use it, even if you're not a qualified educator. It encourages discussion, creativity, and consensus in teaching teams, and it produces practical outcomes such as a storyboard, a detailed learning activities, and action list. Professor Diana Laurillard from the UCL Institute of Education developed the conversational framework to describe the learning from a student's perspective. She identified 6 types of learning as students interact with their teacher, their learning environment, and other students. The 6 learning types are represented as 6 coloured cards in the ABC Learning Design method, and we'll go through each of these now. So learning through acquisition is when the teacher controls the learning narrative and learners are passively listening to lectures and podcasts, reading from books or websites, and watching demos or videos. Collaboration is when students work together on a project where they have to produce a shared output. Collaboration is about the process of working together. Students negotiate their ideas and practice until they agree. They challenge each other and provide clear feedback to develop the best output they can. Discussion requires the learner to articulate their ideas and questions and to challenge and respond to the ideas and questions from the teacher and/or from their peers, using tools such as discussion forums, web conferencing tools as well. So often with discussion in Moodle, we're talking about using discussion forums or webinars like this one. Learning through investigation guides the learner to explore, compare, and critique the text that reflects concepts and ideas being taught. For example, learners might use online advice and guidance, compare digital texts, and use digital tools for searching and evaluating information and ideas. Learning through practice enables the learner to adapt their actions to the task goal and use the feedback to improve their next action. Feedback may come from self-reflection, from peers, from the teacher, or from the activity itself, if it shows them how to improve the result of their action in relation to the goal. So for example, using quizzes with feedback, which we do a lot in Moodle Academy courses. Learning through production is the way the teacher motivates the learner to consolidate what they have learned by articulating their current conceptual understanding and how they use it in practice. Assessment will often require some production. So for example, writing a blog post or an essay or presenting in a webinar. So these are the 6 learning types that we use in the ABC learning design process to break down the different learning activities that students are doing in a course. The conversational framework helps teachers consider the student learning journey by asking, what kind of activity is this technology enabling the students to do? Which promotes an education-first approach. Rather than saying, I want to use a blog post with my students, then designing activities from a technology-first approach, we're looking instead at the learner journey and identifying the best tools to fit the type of learning we want the students to be doing. The point of the conversational framework is to mix it up. Professor Diana Laurillard says that it's better to have a number of different ways of thinking about and doing things with the ideas that we're getting from the teacher. So that's a bit of background for the ABC Learning Design method. Now we're going to go through the process we use to co-design our Moodle Academy courses. The steps have been simplified slightly to suit our shorter workshop timeframe. We use 3 main online tools to design Moodle Academy courses. In Google Sheets, we have a learning design planner, and that's what we're going to be walking through today in our breakout rooms. We also will take a look at the Google Jamboard, which is a digital whiteboard where we design the high-level learner journey, looking at high-level learning tasks and the learning types they encompass. And we use webinar software to run the workshop, either Zoom or Google Meet. So the 6 steps we follow are mostly completed in the Learning Design Planner spreadsheet. First of all, we identify intended learning outcomes, or LOs, sometimes known as intended learning outcomes. We tweet a short description of the course. We develop a high-level storyboard in Jamboard, and then we detail the learning activities back in the spreadsheet based on that high-level storyboard. We then define follow-up actions, and lastly, we review the blend of the course. So let's step through the process now. Intended learning outcomes are statements about what a student will achieve upon successful completion of a unit of study. They establish a foundation upon which the rest of the unit is built, and they guide the development of assessment tasks, learning content, and learning activities. So it's an important first step. We do this before the workshop to give the course team time to develop these learning outcomes. And I'll show you the actual spreadsheet in a moment, but this is what the tab for learning outcomes looks like. To help develop the learning outcomes, the next tab contains action verbs that we can use in our learning outcomes to describe what the learner will be doing. For example, explaining or discussing or demonstrating, etc. In the next step, which is the first step in the 1-hour workshop, we develop a tweet to briefly describe the key objectives of the course. We ask that the course title isn't included in this description. And the point of this step is to build consensus around the overall aim of the course, so the course design team start the learning design process with a similar objective in mind. This is what the tweet tab looks like. We move on to the storyboard next, and there's a link in the Learning Design Planner to the storyboard, which links to the Jamboard, where broadly we describe the types of learning students are doing for each activity in the course. We consider the student learning journey of the course as a timeline, and it's up to the course team how they split this up. But for Moodle Academy courses, the storyboard is broken into topics, and activities are added from left to right under each topic, and sticky notes provide a broad description of the learning task. So here's an example from this course that accompanies this webinar, and you can see that each learning task has 1 or more learning type cards, and then a sticky note on top to explain the learning task. You'll notice some stars on some of the learning tasks as well. Stars signify assessment tasks. So silver stars depict formative assessment that provides feedback, and gold stars depict summative assessments, or assessments that count towards the final grades for the course. Notice how there's a lot of formative assessments throughout the course. If we go back to the first slide, with some summative assessments towards the end of the last topic. In Moodle Academy, we try to include formative assessments throughout the learning journey. So once our high-level learning design is completed, we go back to our learning design planner and we start to break down each high-level task from the storyboard into a more detailed look at each learning type activity. So let's do that now. So for example, for this webinar, we have 4 cards on our high-level learning design, shown here in the corner of the slide. These learning types are acquisition, collaboration, production, and discussion. So for acquisition, we go across to the acquisition column and we select from the drop-down list the appropriate activity or type our own in. So in this case, for acquisition, we choose attend webinars in real time. For collaboration, we choose share and discuss others' outputs using digital tools. For discussion, we choose synchronous audio and video chat. And for production, we choose produce digital documents. And then for each of these, we estimate how long it will take learners to complete each element of the task. So in this case, for acquisition, I've entered 30 minutes, which is basically this part of the webinar I'm doing now. And for collaboration, discussion, and production, I've entered 10 minutes each. These numbers are typed into the coloured columns to the right of the learning activity we selected from the drop-down list. Times will automatically calculate in the total learning time column. So for this webinar, it's 60 minutes long. And then we can see whether the total learning time matches what we expected for the overall course at the top. Next, we choose Moodle tools that we will use to create this learning task. So in this case, it's a Zoom meeting. We can use the ABC Learning Design tool wheel to discover which activities to use for each learning type, which I will cover a bit later in the webinar. Lastly, we select the learning outcomes that align with the activity. In this webinar, I'm covering all the different learning outcomes for this course. So I've added some extra lines underneath and selected each learning outcome, one per line. And I've left the rest of the fields blank on these extra lines. So now that it's complete, I can go back to the Learning Outcomes tab and see how many times the learning outcomes are covered by the various learning tasks. We want to see at least 2 learning tasks for each learning outcome, once to introduce the concept and a second time to test whether it's understood. So for example, in the final quiz or some other summative assessment. So now we define our follow-up actions. Here's the actions for this course, including reviewing the design, developing the course, QAing the course, and finally launching it and delivering this webinar. This step is commonly missed, but it's an important element of the course design process. And then lastly, we review the blend of the course. The spider graph is dynamically generated when you enter the learning time for each learning type aligned to each learning task, which we did before in the coloured columns. The aim is to mix it up to increase, as we mentioned earlier, engagement, inclusivity, and accessibility. Okay, so now it's time to look at a demo. And I'm not going to dwell too long on each of the tabs because we've already gone through them just now. But what I'd like to do is focus on a few areas. So when you first launch the Learning Design Planner, this is using Google Sheets, the first Start tab has an outline of what you can, I can't do that. It has an outline of the process. And we move along then to the next tab, which is the learning outcomes, which I've developed this course. And you can see at the start, when you start doing this, these will all be in red and black, or say 0. And then because I've aligned these to our activities and our assessments, they're showing how many times they've been referenced in the plan. And that's the detailed activities plan. The action verbs that I mentioned before to create the learning outcomes is in the next tab. And then I didn't mention this, but the topics can go into this list, or they might be referenced in an external document if you already have something. And we use both methods for Moodle Academy courses. So I ticked these off to show that I have covered each of the original topic ideas that I came up with when I was doing my initial plans. And there were probably additional content that I've added, which has come out as I go through the process. But this was just to check that I'd covered off the things that I planned to do in the first place. The tweet that I mentioned already is here. It doesn't matter too much how many characters it is, but we try to keep it below 280, like a tweet. And you can put in additional things like the level. We've actually changed this course to intermediate, so I'm just going to update that. And there's a few other things we might want to include in here as well. And now we come to the storyboard. So we go to the next tab, tab 3, storyboard, but then what we do is we launch it in from the link that's in this tab. And once we've created it, we paste the screenshots back in here. So you can see that I've done that already. And I just wanted to go through this step quickly with you to show you how you would use this. So I'm just going to go to the next tab where I have, this is actually a test that I just did. So I'm just going to delete these quickly and we'll start again. So I type my topic 3 topic in here, and this would usually be a Moodle course section. And then say I want to create a new book, which is about course design. I can duplicate these cards. So you right click or you click on the 3 dots and choose duplicate. And then once I've duplicated that, that appears on top of the pile and I can drag it onto my design. So I've got some acquisition because it's a book or multiple pages of content, and I want to make it a bit interactive as well. So like the books or content in the course attached to this webinar, we have embedded questions within the pages. So I'm going to duplicate the practice card, bring this over here, and then quickly describe what it is. So it's the course design, oops. And I can write book if I have a strong idea now of what Moodle tool I'll use, but often people won't know. So we might just say course design, information with some questions and feedback. So it's interactive. Interactive there. And that's just to remind me later when I'm going through my fine level detailed design, what it was that this referred to. And then I go on to my next task. So there's one high level learning task, not going into too much information detail yet. It's just thinking about what the students will actually be doing to complete that task. And at this point, it could be done using different tools. It might be using the lesson tool instead, which we used to use quite a lot on Moodle Academy, but we've switched to the book. So yeah, and then the stars that I did mention before are here, and you can just do the same to duplicate and then drag them on. So this is going to have formative feedback because it is a, it's going to have questions with feedback in there. So it needs a silver star. And yeah, that's as easy as it is to do this stage. Now back in here, once you've pasted in your design, the activities is where you would fill in the detail. So for that particular item, I don't have it copied in here yet, but let's have a look at the storyboard itself. So it is a course design interactive content. So I go back to the activities tab and I type in here course design information. And we have to make sure we don't touch this grey time column because that's automatically calculated. But I go across to acquisition because you can see we've got an acquisition card here, and I can choose read online materials, and it's going to be a short piece of information, so I'll just put 5 minutes. And then the other card we've got is practice, a purple card. So we come across to the practice column and we choose from the drop-down list a quiz with formative feedback, and I think that's only going to take maybe 2 minutes to do. There won't be many questions in there at all. And then I can choose the learning outcomes that adhere to that apply to that learning task. And you can see that the time has automatically calculated here, 7 minutes. So I can choose this steps in order. No, we are course design information. So maybe I might choose this one here. It might be relevant. If there's nothing relevant, you just leave that blank, so you can just delete that out. And I'm just going to delete that out for now, so I can redo this later. Delete these. Okay. Now, back in here, if we go to our Actions tab, you can see what we have done for this course with the QA check and everything, but we showed this before. And the blend is showing here. So this is dynamically generated. So there's about an hour of acquisition and about an hour of production. So it's quite an active course, lots of active learning with a bit of variety in there. Not too much investigation because the information is being provided within the course with the acquisition, and a bit of discussion, a little bit of collaboration, some practice, lots of production as well. So I'll show you how these relate to each other. So if I go to the activities and say I changed this quiz here, instead of 5 minutes to do the final quiz, maybe it is 20 minutes. And if you see now, the blend is going to have a lot more practice in it. So that's jumped up quite a bit. And that's how that works. So by adding in the numbers in there, you are affecting the blend that appears on this page here. And if you see everything towards acquisition, it's not a very active course. So you might want to consider whether you can introduce other elements that would make it a bit more engaging for your students. So at this point, does anyone have any questions at all?
Yes, Jessica, we have a couple of questions in the chat, actually, if you might like to just quickly respond. Simone is asking, how do you know the time? So when you put down the time it's going to take, how do you know that? That's one question. Okay.
Sure. I mean, I'm estimating, and there are tools out there that you can use to estimate the time based on how fast people read or the average reading time. So you can enter your text into those and it will give you an estimate as well. So yeah, but okay. For me, it's just a guess.
Yeah, well, me too. And then, but sometimes based on your experience as you've developed quite a few courses as well, I think. Gabrielle is asking, and thanks to El Piniki for giving a response here, why is the radar plot curved when joining one activity type to another? Is that just the setting on how to display the graph? I'm not sure. It's not my strong point.
I think it's just the way it appears in G Sheets, Google Sheets. So I think the one that is done on paper is we just draw lines between each point so that it's not curved. I'm not sure what the standard is, but that's just how it looks in this technology.
Okay, those are all the questions in the chat. I don't know if anyone else has any questions at all.
Yeah, is there a recommended amount of each learning type? How do you know you've got the right blend? So there isn't a recommended amount of each learning type. It will depend on what you're creating. As long as it's not all acquisition, you're going to be engaging your learners a lot more if there's some active learning happening. And now it's your turn. So we're going to break into our breakout groups. We're going to give you about 15 minutes to run through that process that I just went through as a group. You'll have a facilitator from Moodle Academy in there. They're not necessarily going to be experts with ABC Learning Design. So if you have any questions that come up during that, you can always bring them back to the main room afterwards, and we'll have a time to discuss how we found the process and also any questions, answer any questions you have. We should all be back in the room now. So do we have any comments or feedback or questions based on the process that you just went through? I think I see Mary raising her hand.
Yes, we do. Perfect timing. Just as we were being brought back into the main room, we had a question, which was, we were looking at the blended, the graph. And the question was, is that a percentage? How are those numbers calculated?
I think it's based on minutes, the way I've set it up. So it's yeah, every minute is graphed. So not a percentage.
Okay, thank you.
Were there any other questions or comments? How do people find the process, perhaps?
I think we have people saying not enough time, but I agree. We could have spoken for, well, we could have spoken for 60 minutes, but on the other hand, you know, this was just a very brief insight into it.
Okay.
Simon does ask, how do we get this programmed Excel sheet? If you're asking how you get these, then I think they're available in the course, aren't they? And Christophe is saying very interesting. Yes, thank you, Christophe.
I've actually shared in the course our template that we use and we update quite often. So you have access to the things that we use in Moodle Academy. So what you can do is in the course, you make a copy. So please don't request edit access. I forgot to warn the team, we'll probably get lots of those requests. You just have to make a copy and then you can do your design in there. So you can have a go yourselves. Okay, so I'll move on with the slides then. There's another question actually. I was just wondering from students' perspective, could this process be cognitively overloading, as in the eventual learning design, or? Yes. I don't think you necessarily are going to be designing very complex tasks. We use this for quite simple courses. The ABC Learning Design course that's attached to this webinar is quite complex with some of its concepts, but Rajneel, for example, you create developer courses that are not necessarily complex. So it can be used to design very simple learning as well. And are we co-designing with students? Well, I guess so, because our Moodle community are our students, they're our learners. So yes, they are, but we have experts coming in to help us design. So yes and no, I suppose. All right. Anyway, I'll move on for now. And if there are any, am I coming to Munich next time? Maybe. Sounds good. Maybe when it's warmer. All right, so I'll move on to explain a bit about the other aspects of our course design process, and there'll be a chance for more questions at the end. So one thing that I mentioned before briefly was the Moodle Academy tool wheel. This is also linked from the task in the course that has been built to accompany this webinar. And you can have a look at the tool wheel, and all of the default out of the box activities in Moodle and resources are mapped to each learning type. And then the extra activities or plugins that we've added to Moodle Academy are in the outside ring here. So you can see we've got Hot Question, Groups Choice, which some of you use to select your course today, an open forum, which allows anonymous forum posts, Zoom, which is how we're all here today, and embed question, which I mentioned we use to embed questions within books. And I see a question, how did you create the wheel internal process at Moodle? I used the template that came out of the abcld.org, so abc-ld.org. I actually developed the original one for Moodle when I was back working at UCL, and we've adapted it for Moodle Academy. Okay, and yes, for those who have to leave, this recording is available later in the course anyway. So just a bit about the Moodle Academy tool wheel. It shows the core Moodle activities, but just to let you know what we tend to use, we use Moodle books with embedded quiz questions, as I've mentioned, the Moodle quiz for formative and summative assessment, Groups Choice, which I've mentioned already, to enable learners to self-select their groups, Zoom for our webinars, which works quite well with Groups Choice because it actually allows you to automatically have students select their group and then move into those breakout rooms that we created before. The glossary for sharing terminology, and either discussion forums or open forums if we want anonymous posting. There are other options, but one of them is that we have a content translation plugin, which we use for our community to help us translate our courses. And that prevents us from using things like H5P or certain question types. Although H5P does support translation, it requires edit access, and we don't allow our translators edit access to our content. So we are a bit restricted there, but we do still cover things like H5P in our webinars, even if we can't have them in our courses. Just quickly on Creative Commons licensing, we mainly use CC BY, which is the attribution license from the Creative Commons, which means that you just can reuse anything in the course, but you need to make sure you attribute the original authors. However, for this course and all our other ABC Learning Design courses, you do need to get permission from the original authors if you want to use the materials in a commercial setting. So the license doesn't, it prevents commercial use. But non-commercial means not primarily intended for or directed towards commercial advantage or monetary compensation. So for those of us working in places like universities and schools, you can freely use it, that's fine. All Moodle Academy courses are built using a standardized course template. So it helps maintain consistency across our courses and improves the overall experience of the learners. And it contains some common information, so we're not having to rewrite it for every course. So every course starts with the standard announcements forum, and you may have seen these before if you manage to get to the learning design for the in the breakout rooms. We already had some things on that board, and that's these things here that are from the template. So that's the announcements forum, and about this course book, which contains the aim, learning outcomes, course structure, assessments and credits, a general discussion forum, and a course pre-check, which is just to see what you might know already about the content, but is formative and doesn't count towards the final grade. And each course ends with a course check, a summative quiz. So for our shorter courses, which we have on Moodle Academy, that tends to be 10 questions that you need to pass with 80%, but you can redo them. We acknowledge the contributions of our co-creators and anyone who presents webinars with us, either in the presented by block on the course homepage, which is in the right-hand block drawer. And we also have a credits page where we credit anybody whose work we may have drawn upon for the course. It's not always there if we don't have to credit anybody, or if there's nobody to credit. And all presenters and co-designers receive a badge as well after they've helped. We do a thorough QA of all our courses before they're released to ensure quality, and we maintain consistency that way. And we have a checklist that helps us with this process. So if you're interested in helping us to co-design a course, you can get to that through our Get Involved course on Moodle Academy. And you can either nominate yourself or others to help with particular topics. So you can also nominate course topics that you want to see in future on Moodle Academy for webinars and courses, and you can vote for your favourite ones. And we use this list often to see what we're going to be building next. So yeah, do go on there and let us know. And also, if you want to help us translate, we'd be very grateful for any help with that as well. You just need to complete the content translating Moodle Academy course. And once you've passed that course, you'll get content translation rights to help translate in your language. So that's how we co-create courses on Moodle Academy. If anyone has any final questions, please let me know. Is the storyboard available for the students? Do you mean, Gabrielle, I think asked that. Are you talking about whether it's available on the course, on the course that has been developed with this webinar? If so, yes. I don't know of anybody sharing the storyboard that they've used with their students if they're using it in an educational setting. But there's nothing preventing you from doing that. And if you're co-designing with students, of course, you would be, and you'd be perhaps getting them to help you improve courses as well. I know of people using that process to run quality reviews of their courses with the students and make improvements year on year. Once you've confirmed the course design, who writes the actual content? Do you have subject matter experts? Yes, we find subject matter experts in the community, and they work with us to build the courses if we don't already have the expertise internally in Moodle HQ. And we ran our global Moodle Moot in September, and we have a lot of brilliant presentations from that event. And we're actually asking and inviting some of those presenters back to talk about the topics that were really popular or that fit well with what we're planning to do next. So you can take a look at those. They're up on YouTube and also on Moodle Academy. My next Moodle course will be created based on this information. Excellent topic. If you want to share that on Twitter as well, there's an ABC, I think it's ABC_LD Twitter handle that you can tag, and Natasha and Clive will see that come through as well. They'd love to see that. Do you know any expert for learning design in Germany or whereabouts in Europe I can attend a course? We've got another course on Moodle Academy actually about learning design, and another one about introduction to ABC. Also, I suggest you take the course associated with this webinar. That will help you too.
And actually, it's the courses may not be in German, but you can always translate them online, inline in the academy, and then spread it and use it with the audience you have in German. So you may consider that.
And you can automatically translate using the Google Translate or other tools in your browser too. So if you want to translate as you go, so you can understand the text. All right, I don't know if I missed any questions, but please let me know if I did. But thanks for everyone.
I think we've got mainly thank yous now, actually, Jessica.
Great. Well, thank you for bearing with me while I lost internet before, and hopefully you got something out of the breakout room. So yeah, great to see you all, and I'll see you hopefully at the next webinar. If you need to go, then please do, but I'll just quickly wrap up now. I've already mentioned that you can suggest topic ideas, contribute to webinars and courses, and translate Moodle Academy. And so you can go to our Get Involved course if you want to know more about that. And of course, please help spread the word about Moodle Academy. Tell your colleagues about the courses we offer, the events we run, that they can go review the recordings, and every course that you complete will earn a badge. Educators might like to think about obtaining their Moodle Educator Certificate as well. So you can take the Are You Ready for the MEC quiz, and one of our certified service providers will support you through the certification process. But that's all from me. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you found it useful, and yeah, I'll see you soon.